Greetings, fellow RimWorlders. I wanted to come at you real quick with the latest patch notes. I know I'm a little late to the party, so I apologize if you've already read it, but I think sometimes it's helpful to have the same information in video form. So, without further ado, this is 1.3.3287, and it focuses heavily on changing the way that ideology kind of plays or adding a default playstyle. So in Tynan's intro message, he basically says like ideology can clobber you over the head with complexity, which for experienced players is incredible, right? I've had so much fun playing with all the different game modes, but it can be really overwhelming for players, and there's also a general desire to be able to experience all of RimWorld. So a lot of these changes are geared towards adding a new game mode that has a lot of the richness and content of ideology, sans the limitations and complexities that come with having precepts and those types of things. And then, as usual, Tynan is always, and his team at Ludion is always fixing lots of bugs and making lots of improvements. So, headline feature is now this idea of ideology's gameplay being divorced from the content. So you can start a new game and you'll have the ability to have Guardian trees, have biosculpt pods, have the ancient complex quests, all of those things in the absence of actually needing to go through the grueling process of creating an ideology of your own. There are also some changes in here, though, that we'll talk about more as we get into the UI improvements about making it easier to create an ideology. So first bit of UI changes: rework the ideology setup UI. Classic, custom, and load buttons are now selectable elements and take effect when the player hits next. So the idea is you'll be able to decide the level of complexity when you enter into the game. The old classic mode is now called classic-like and is one of the mild presets. I'm not sure exactly what that means. I'll have to go in and play with that to figure it out. But meme tooltips now list all the prevented precepts. I think this is really, really important because one of the hardest things, and they've addressed it in a couple different ways here, but one of the hardest things to be able to understand is what are you limiting yourself? The number of times that I got into a game and I was like, oh my gosh, I made a decision that prevented my pawns from being able to sleep in the same bed before they're married, or those types of things. It wasn't always immediately evident or interrogatable. Randomizing precepts no longer brings up a confirm dialogue if the user has not edited the precepts. I think this is just smart. It's nice to be able to kind of random, and then see what you get. We now draw a thin, faint box around the ideologian preset selectables. This is awesome. So for context, what this means is when you select certain memes, they have certain precepts that are locked in place, right? If you are a transhumanist, you always like body modification, I believe is a good example. The issue is there are other ones that are optional. And I don't know of a good example of this, but there are certain memes that have a couple of options. Like, I think collectivist might be like, you can be okay with slavery or you cannot mind slavery, right? You can like it or you can be okay with it. And so being able to see all the places that you can toggle depending on the memes that you selected, I think is going to be huge for making the user more capable of understanding the decisions that they're making and what decisions they have to make. The ideologian buildings missing alerts now specify what building it is a variant of. I think that's really nice as well. You run into this sometimes when people come to visit and you're like, oh, all of a sudden I'm missing an Autobong or something like that. And then a show all checkbox on the IDEO dialog shows all the hidden precepts. I think that'll be useful as well. I'll need to see that to fully understand it. And then there's been a lot of changes to meat eating precepts. That's that last post there. We'll see more about that as we go through it. So in terms of tuning, There's been another change. I don't think this is the first change to it, but they've added a 0.75 factor for slaves when calculating wealth. So a slave is now not going to count as much towards growing your colony's wealth, and you'll have smaller raids if you have a slave-based colony. I think this is useful. I still think it's too much. Just my gut sense is that slaves should be very low contribution towards wealth because they come with their own perils, right? You can have slave rebellions on certain intervals. If you suddenly have a major raid and you don't have the ability to manage your slave population, you can get into a lot of trouble. And the next two I felt very heavily, so I'm really happy to see these changed. But basically, the mech center drop raids, the frequency has been reduced in old colonies. For context, the colony I'm playing right now on YouTube is a very old colony. I think we're at like 20 years at the moment or something like that. And we were getting tons and tons of drop raids, which were exciting, but you want them to be kind of the exception and not the rule. And so they changed that, and then also the random drop raids. So in both cases, it is more likely that your pawns will be attacked from the sides of your base rather than other places like directly on your head or in your storage room. The meme Flesh Purity no longer forces the anti-biosculpting precept. This is super smart. And for those who don't know, Flesh Purity basically says, I don't want any bionics. And it was one of those precepts that was highly punishing because your pawns would just like lose limbs or lose things like that. You know, they'd lose an eye, roof would collapse on them, whatever it happens to be. And you'd just be out of luck. You wouldn't really have a solution. And biosculpting pods are about, one of their features is bioregen, the ability to regrow limbs, regrow eyes, and those types of things. And so I think that it's huge that now Flesh Purity is a more viable playstyle because of biosculpting pods. And I kind of feel like they could go a step further with this and say like, Flesh Purity pawns also benefit being whole, and they could have negative thoughts for missing body parts and desire bioregen. I think that would be a really cool like next step. As for the bigotry precepts, it seems like they're going to be easier to work into your playstyle, and will also make it so bigoted guests are less difficult and ornery to deal with. The next one is removed carnivore precept from the requirements for Rancher meme. This makes a lot of sense. Rancher pushes you in the direction of generating a lot of meat and utilizing a lot of animals, but it was a little overly restrictive. You know, it just means that you don't have to deal with food management as much. Tynan and the team have added a lot of mechanisms for making it easier to do that, but generally speaking, I think that this is a smart change, and judicious use of required precepts is smart, and carnivore for Rancher was just kind of like, you're going to be doing that mostly anyways. Also for Rancher, I believe, the no recent animal slaughter negative thought has gone away. You're probably going to be doing a lot of animal slaughtering, but it does help to not have that popping up constantly and, you know, making your pawns miserable because you have slow-growing animals or whatever it happens to be. And then finally, removed most meme associations from the vegetarian and carnivore precepts. They shouldn't appear unless the player specifically chooses them. So what this means is you're not going to randomly be like, oh, I just selected a meme and now I have to be a vegetarian, right? You have to go in and specifically select it. And that will be one of those things that will be highlighted as a yellow box, I believe, or a highlighted box of some sort in the UI. When you select a meme, it'll be like, hey, you can change this, and you'll be able to make it more punishing if you want the challenge. So, miscellaneous bits and bobs. It's easier to create specific ingredient meals now with the debug menu. Reworked the Eclipse precept artwork. Okay, haven't checked it out. I'm sure it's a lovely icon. Then we have something to do with name and game that I don't fully understand yet. System now ensures that all mods adhere to this. So I think this is actually very valuable. This is basically when you have mod dependencies, I think the game has become more intelligent about making sure that all of its prerequisites are loaded before the main mod is loaded. And then a log warning message if a quest script is unaffected by points and population. The user is warned for something for the not now option if the affected points, if it is affected by points or population. I'm going to need to see that one. I don't fully understand it. I understand what they're saying. They're saying that certain quests you have a not now, like a postpone option. And I don't know if what they're saying is that if you click not now, you are resetting the points and population so that you can't kind of like game it and like have all your colonists leave in a caravan, then accept it when you only have one person there and then bring everybody back. I don't fully understand. And then added a fail message for generating single quests. A lot of these things are a bit more esoteric. I don't think they're transformative to the game. Then in fixes, there are only a couple that I think are particularly interesting to talk about, so I'll try to move through these pretty quickly. Intel graphics got a bit of an upgrade, which is nice. Torture Crown is now equipped by masochistic colonists. I think that's probably very useful. Classic mode, there will be less... you don't start with some classic precepts. They've made classic mode a little less prescriptive. You can now cure resurrection mech serum's blindness using the biosculpt pod. I believe you couldn't before. And the resurrection mech serum now plays its jingle at the appropriate time. I guess it used to when you picked up the thing. Now it does it when you apply it. Some more things around mod loading, claiming ruined furniture. Yeah, I don't see a lot of other things that are particularly critical, and I want to keep this video kind of short and to the point. So to summarize very quickly, this is largely about changing the way that we all play ideology, or giving us a new play style that is like all the content without all the golden handcuffs that is ideology. I think it's a nice change, nice improvements. I really enjoyed this evening having more diversity of raids again. This is something that they've been working on over the last few patches and makes a huge difference to the end game of the game when there is diversity of raid encounters, and coupling that with a new playstyle is always fun. But anyways, if you are into RimWorld content, there should be a playlist linked at the end of the video of my current RimWorld playthrough. And if you found this video at all helpful, I try to do patch video notes for all the games that I'm playing at any given moment. So thank you for watching, and yeah, hope to see you on a live stream sometime. Mondays are generally my RimWorld night. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all later. Bye-bye.